Hi everyone, I'm Eva Carter. Today, we're talking about the man who turned the British crown into one non-stop party. Imagine a pathological liar, a womanizer, a spendthrift, and an egoist who managed to rack up millions in debt before he even became king. He has been called the most hated monarch in English history. But behind that reputation lies a story that rivals any Hollywood thriller. Before we dive into this whirlpool of luxury and scandal, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Things are about to get very interesting. But where did this monster of indulgence come from? To understand George, we have to look back at a childhood that felt more like a prison. George IV was the first of 15 children born to King George III and Queen Charlotte. Interestingly, at the moment of his birth, he was mistakenly announced as a girl, though the mistake was soon realized. The boy grew up remarkably gifted, easily mastering foreign languages and the fine arts. However, his father was determined to raise his son as a model of virtue, using incredibly harsh methods to do so. The future monarch grew up under a regime of strict discipline and austerity. His days were filled with endless lessons, physical drills, and very plain food. The heir's diet was restricted to porridge, simple bread, and vegetable soups, with all sweets strictly forbidden. He was even forced to eat his pie without the crust. His father dreamed of creating a perfect human being, entirely free from the desire for pleasure. But this forced isolation had the opposite effect. Within the young prince, a desperate thirst for rebellion was growing, and it exploded the moment he tasted freedom. Once he broke away, George decided to make up for lost time on such a scale that all of Britain felt the shock. His first act of independence was a relentless drive to do everything against his father's wishes, turning his life into an endless celebration. His father, George III, believed that a monarch was a messenger from heaven and a pillar of moral perfection. To instill these qualities in his firstborn, he turned the child's life into a series of endless restrictions. The German roots of the House of Hanover left their mark. The palace was ruled by a spirit of rigid discipline and Spartan simplicity. The future king had to rise with the sun and follow a schedule that left no room for fun. His meals consisted of the simplest soups and grains. Even rare treats were censored. The young prince was forbidden from eating the tasty, crispy crust of a pie, so as not to encourage a craving for sensory pleasures. Over time, George III began to lose his mental clarity under the weight of ruling a massive empire, which only fueled his desire to control everything around him. He demanded perfection from his son, but ended up creating his polar opposite. The constant suppression of the young prince's talents and desires led to a massive buildup of rebellious energy. George IV grew into a man who seemingly could never get enough of life. Every action he took later was a cry of defiance against his father's dogmas. He became a true seeker of pleasure, hungry for everything expensive, bright, and forbidden. As soon as the golden boy escaped his cage, he decided to spite his father in the most elaborate way possible. He began spending money he didn't have. At 21, the prince took over Carlton House, which immediately became the epicenter of high society scandals and legendary late-night parties. George became a true icon of waste, surrounding himself with priceless art, the finest horses, and a wardrobe that cost a fortune. Despite receiving generous allowances from Parliament, which would be millions of pounds in today's money, his appetite for spending was bottomless. Maintaining his stables alone cost over £31,000 a year, equivalent to $4 million today. By the age of 33, his personal debt reached a staggering £69 million in modern currency. Banker friends were happy to lend to the heir, indulging his obsession with excess. This lifestyle took a heavy toll on his appearance. Due to his addiction to rich food, the prince rapidly lost his shape, becoming incredibly heavy by his middle years. However, his vanity demanded a different image. In official portraits, he was never shown as a stout man, but as a powerful, muscular hero in broad-shouldered robes. But money wasn't the prince's only passion. A true drama unfolded in his private life when George decided to enter a union that defied all the laws of the land. At the age of 21, the prince met Maria Fitzherbert, a woman 6 years his senior who had already been widowed twice. His passion was so intense that he pursued her daily until she agreed to a union. However, such a relationship was legally impossible. Maria was a Catholic, and the Act of Settlement of 1701 prohibited heirs from such connections under the threat of losing their right to the throne. Furthermore, the Royal Marriages Act of 1772 required the king's personal approval, which in this case was out of the question. Refusing to back down, George came up with a daring plan. He found a priest named Augustus Frederick in the notorious Fleet Prison, where he was held for a debt of £500. The prince paid his bills in exchange for a secret ceremony held right in Maria's apartment. Despite having no legal standing, this bond was a reality for the couple for 9 long years. When his father eventually kicked George out of his residence for his wasteful ways, he found a home with Maria. She considered herself his true companion until the end of her days, even when their intimacy officially ended with a cold letter. Ultimately, a debt of nearly £70 million backed the prince into a corner. He had to betray the woman he loved for an official deal that became his greatest nightmare. The only way for the prince to escape financial ruin was to marry his cousin, Caroline of Brunswick. This was a purely practical move. The British Parliament agreed to pay off his massive debts only if he entered a legal marriage. The first meeting between the future husband and wife was a total disaster, marked by mutual disgust. Upon seeing his bride, the prince immediately demanded a glass of strong brandy, while Caroline was shocked to find that George was much larger than his flattering portraits suggested. The heir to the throne was blunt, complaining about his bride's poor manners and lack of hygiene, claiming her presence was almost unbearable. On the day of the official wedding, the prince became so intoxicated that he spent his first night as a married man unconscious on a rug by the fireplace. Nevertheless, the formal duty of producing an heir was fulfilled. 9 months later, their only child, Charlotte, was born. Immediately after this, the couple hurried to end all communication, moving to different residences, and eventually, Caroline left the country altogether. Having freed himself from his wife's presence, George finally reached the moment he had waited for, his coronation. And believe me, this celebration of ego had no equal in history. At the age of 57, George finally officially took the throne. His coronation in July of 1821 was the most expensive celebration in the kingdom's history, costing the state £26 million in modern money. It was a true triumph of vanity. While the country was recovering from long wars and economic hardship, the monarch threw a lavish banquet for himself. His legal wife, Caroline, tried desperately to attend the ceremony and claim her rights, but on her husband's orders, the guards simply shut the doors in her face. This rejection broke her spirit so deeply that she left this world shortly after. The king's passion for the exotic was seen in the construction of the famous Royal Pavilion in Brighton. This bizarre building, blending Indian, Chinese, and Moorish styles, baffled his contemporaries and annoyed the aristocracy. George spent enormous sums on his architectural whims while showing almost no interest in state affairs. Even during his years as regent, he preferred to leave all responsibility to Parliament, famously stating that work was not his calling. The monarch lived in total isolation from the needs of the common people, spending his days on food, drink, and endless social talk. But behind the glitter of diamonds and the clinking of glasses lay a frightening physical decay. The king was literally fading away before the eyes of his inner circle. The final years of George IV's reign were a time of total physical collapse. His excessive eating and drinking turned the monarch into an incredibly heavy and sickly man. His weight exceeded 111 kilograms, and his body was ravaged by gout and other painful conditions. Nearly blind from cataracts, the king lived a secluded life, finding relief only in an opium tincture that was used as medicine back then. Even just a few months before his passing, he refused to give up his excesses. A single breakfast for the monarch could consist of 2 pigeons, 3 beefsteaks, nearly a bottle of white wine, and several glasses of strong brandy. When the king left this world in June of 1830, the results of the medical examination shocked even the doctors. His heart was literally covered in layers of fat, and a large tumor was found in his body. The public's reaction to the news of his passing was remarkably cold. The Times newspaper wrote that there had never been an individual whose departure was less regretted. No tears were shed for him, and not a single heart felt true sorrow. George IV left behind not a great empire, but mountains of debt and a tarnished reputation. But was he just a villain or a victim of his circumstances? Despite all the controversy and the anger of his subjects, this monarch did leave something behind. His passion for luxury and beauty gave Britain priceless art collections and unique architectural landmarks that still define the look of many cities today. Although people at the time despised him for his endless ego, it was his refined taste that gave many royal residences their current greatness. He was a man of extremes, where a sophisticated lover of beauty lived alongside a ruthless spendthrift. The story of George IV is a powerful reminder that even unlimited power and massive wealth cannot buy true respect or bring lasting personal happiness. His journey from a brilliant prince to a lonely and disliked ruler became one of the most revealing chapters in the history of the British crown. If you enjoyed this historical thriller, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. It's the best way to support what I do. And to learn even more about the secrets of royal families and the scandals of the past, be sure to watch these 2 videos appearing on your screen right now. There are more incredible stories waiting for you there. I'm Eva Carter, and I'll see you in the next video.